Good evening, everyone. Let's respect time and we'll be starting now with the workshop of the day and the session. And at the very outset, let me thank all the three panelists for sparing their valuable time and joining us over the weekend. If we talk about the COVID world, I would like to first look at the positive side. And the positive side of this COVID world for all of us out here is that it is not every day in a normal scenario that we can have all three such great stalwarts joining us. But I think perhaps the COVID world enabled the technology adaptation and all of us are here. I thank each one of you for joining. I am privileged to share the details of the three panelists who are here with us. I start with Anubhav. Anubhav and I, we shared a small corporate journey together when we were in Asian Paints together. And obviously, right now, Anubhav is the partner with BCG. Thank you so much, Anubhav, for sparing your time and joining us over here.
Thank you, Subrat. Thanks for the invite.
Moving next, again, a good friend, Bhavna. Bhavna is the executive director with PwC Consulting. Bhavna and I, we go back now 15 years. Am I right, Bhavna? And thank you so much again for sparing your time on this weekend and joining us and sharing your great thoughts. I'm always a great fan of what you share. Third, but definitely not by any stretch of imagination, any bit lower than any of the other two panelists, Himanshu, and I think of all the three panelists, Himanshu and I go back the longest. It is 18 years now, Himanshu, 2002.
Yeah, 2002.
2002. So it is 18 years now. We first, our paths crossed at engineering college. Now, thanks, Himanshu, for joining us.
Yeah,
Without much
thanks,
ado, I'll be just sharing few of the norms which I'll request each one of you to adhere to, and I will also be sharing the flow of the session as we have planned. I will request each one of you to please keep your audio on the mute mode. Even if the video is open, the audio must be on mute mode. That helps in effective communication. We'll be starting by requesting each of the three panelists to share their views, maybe for 10 minutes each. And after that, based on what they share, I'll be, maybe I will have one or two questions for each one of them. And it will be great to hear their views about the same. Towards the end, maybe for 15 minutes, we'll be opening it for audience Q&A. And at that point of time, we'll try to take as many questions as possible. I'm also aware that some of you have shared your questions in advance with us, and we'll be taking up a couple of them as well. The session today is going to be an interesting one because each one of them brings a perspective not only about the consulting world, but about the various sectors and a much more holistic view as to where we are and in which direction we are moving. And that is where it stands out from any other, if I talk about domain-specific interaction which we have planned till now. Without much ado, may I now request Bhavna. Bhavna, would you go first, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Subrat. Really appreciate being here today. And good evening and welcome to this conversation, everyone. So when Subrat and I were talking earlier, we thought about three questions that may be areas of interest for you. The first one that he really posed to me was that when we talk about what's happening around us, one of the things that we hear a lot of is this term called the new normal. So what is this new normal all about, right? And what is it that makes it new? And what is it that makes it normal, right? So let's just spend a couple of minutes on that. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of, as I've had conversations with industry leaders and stalwarts from across organizations, across different walks of life, what is the sentiment that we're picking up? I think the sentiment that we're picking up is that anything that we took for granted, anything that we regarded as a holy cow is today questionable. right? Let me give you a data point. In 2019, PwC published a report on, what are going to be some of those factors that will disrupt the world of work or that will disrupt business effectively. As we put together the list of factors, we had a chat with both CEOs and CFOs of organizations to really understand what is their thought process, what are they preparing for, etc. And this was called the Crisis Preparedness Survey. The top 3 or 4 things on that list were quite understandably competition, disruption from very different types of competition, market disruption, financial disruption, etc. In the top 10, we did not have a pandemic appearing anywhere, right? So I think what makes this new is the fact that we are limited by our own thinking. We are limited by our own range of possibilities in being able to predict something like this happening and the impact of something like this, right? So that's one aspect to why new. The other aspect to why new is because there are some aspects of our ways of life that we have taken for granted, right? Think about, you want to get from destination A to destination B, you call Uber. You want to get from city A to city B or country A to country B, Make My Trip or any of the other travel portals sort of help you do that. Today, you don't have the right to make that choice. That right itself has been suspended because that is where the greater good of all of us comes in, right? And therefore, what is new about this entire situation is a lot of established ways of working are no longer available to us, right? And therefore, I think 2-3 implications of this new normal that become very, very important for us to take cognizance of is one. Today, we are talking about countrywide lockdowns that are happening for a certain period of time. What happens if this particular pandemic goes down and there is a resurgence? Is it possible? Why not, right? What happens if we have peaks and troughs of the same thing happening over a period of time? As we've looked at different leaders, and most recently I was in a conversation with various CEOs of family-owned businesses, their biggest fear was that we open up and then in August, September, we have another wave of lockdowns happening, right? Because again, the number of COVID positive cases, they sort of go up, right? So in this entire scenario, I think the term agility, which at one point of time had become equal to consulting jargon, is more relevant than ever before. How each one of us is really thinking about what we do, how we do it, how we are relevant in this scenario, I think that is what becomes absolutely critical. The second aspect that Subrat and I briefly touched upon was that, in this kind of a scenario, therefore, for each one of you as either people who have some amount of experience under your belt or people who are looking forward to joining the corporate world in the near future, what are some of those things that become extremely critical, right? And I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 skills which are now table stakes. One, you may have a certain functional domain. That functional domain could be finance, could be marketing, could be HR. You may be terrific at it. But guess what? If you don't speak the language of technology, then you're pretty much obsolete, right? More and more with things like work from home becoming a reality. I'm sure all of you have been reading about how organizations around the world are talking about work from home, not just for the period of this lockdown, but work from home for a longer spell of time, right? With that happening, the way digital technology is getting adopted and the way digital technology is going to be used to drive experience is going to be critical. So your ability to dovetail your functional expertise with an understanding of how to make it work through technology, extremely important. That's one. The second piece that assumes greater significance is how do we appreciate the interlinkage between factors which did not have obvious interconnections, but which in the current context, actually you have to look at remote factors coming together to really have a play together. let me give you an example. Let's talk about supply chain strategy, right? One of the big changes that has happened is over the years, companies realize that to have a balanced supply chain strategy, you must have multiple suppliers, right? And then it went to multiple suppliers from multiple spaces. Today, the conversation that most organizations are having is how can I protect my supply chain by having multiple suppliers, not just multiple companies, but on multiple continents in multiple countries and geographies, right? So that I'm hedging my risk. Now, this was possibly something that we hadn't thought of earlier, and we will need to start thinking about differently. People experience is another fantastic example of this kind of change. Until fairly recently, we were talking about how the millennials are the ones who are looking at, getting options, not getting boxed down by title, by compensation, etc., but really having the flexibility to experiment and do things differently. One of the big things that the COVID crisis has thrown into perspective is the criticality of liquid workforce and of people who are working part-time with multiple organizations to get things done. So the war for talent, which we've heard about for many, many years, has just assumed a whole new dimension. So this is the second skill. The third one that I truly believe is going to be critical is learning intelligence. Now, we've all heard about cognitive intelligence and emotional intelligence as being really important. But I think one of the biggest pieces that is going to drive us going forward is our own learning intelligence. And learning intelligence, this was part of a white paper that I co-authored, which was launched in 2017, October. And it's very simply defined as being very clear on what I want to learn, why I want to learn that, and how I'm going to learn that, right? Because if you look at the ecosystem around you, there's a lot of noise. You can learn as much as you have an appetite for, but how do you truly pick those things that are relevant to you, that are relevant to your context, and that you can make best use of? I think that's going to be critical. So I'll pause over there. Those are my initial thoughts, Subrat.
Thanks a lot, Bhavna. Anubhav, before I come to you, I think I'm slightly late, but one thing which I would like to share to all the participants over here, that each of the three experts over here, they are sharing their views in their individual capacity. And even while asking questions, I will request each one of you to be talking about, you may ask questions related to the general query and the general discussion which we have during the next 45 minutes, but not something very specific related to their hiring strategy or something very specific which they may not be very comfortable sharing. So Anubhav, over to you. Thank you so much, Bhavna. Over to you, Anubhav.
Thank you, Subrat, and very good evening to all of you. It was great to hear Bhavna here. I think a very, very good perspective of the overall key skills that everyone needs to look at. I am Anubhav Pateria. I am a partner with Boston Consulting Group right now. And before that, I had been with corporate started my career with Asian Paints briefly, then moved to Accenture, and where Himanshu and I do share good history. After that, moved to Booz, which became Strategy N, and from there I've been to BCG. So I think a good journey across the consulting world and starting from industry. So the way I was thinking about is because as Bhavna has already laid out a good picture, what does the new normal mean? Let me now, to build on that, talk about, so let me now structure my thoughts into three parts, right? Let me first start with how will world change? A quick perspective on what does that mean on consulting? How is consulting expected to change, if at all? And third is, what does it mean for you? And I'm assuming as most of you are graduating this year, this would be on top of your minds. I will attempt to give a quick perspective on that, and then we'll be happy to take questions. Starting from the year, the keyword 2020, this has been the year of milestones. And when I say the year of milestones, if you would have seen any prediction 5 years, 10 years back, even 20 years back, 2020 used to be the year that everyone talked about. in 2020 such and such is going to happen, in 2020 we will reach there, in 2020 we will become superpower, in 2020 artificial intelligence will rule the world. So 2020 had a very, very fantastic connotation in terms of one of the major milestones where our progress as a civilization would have been tested. Unfortunately, this has been the year of of a very, very different dimension. It's a year where now we are all talking pandemic, plague, or year of the plague, or whatever. But I think what cannot be denied is that this year has put forward a challenge in front of everyone, which has been not thought for. World has not thought about it. We were not prepared for it. And now that it is in front of us, everyone, when I say everyone, from the countries, from the industries, from individuals, everyone is struggling to make the best of it, right? How to survive this well, and how to make sure that the entire economy and the entire society survives this well. Now, how is world going to change because of this? So it has not been that world has not been changing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think before even this pandemic struck, the pace of change of the world was very, very fast, especially in the domain of business. When I am talking about, I will refrain from talking about the politics at this point of time. The business world was changing very, very fast. There were emerging technologies. Digital was ruling the roost. As Bhavna talked about, some of the skills which were going to becoming more material. So things were happening, and it was inevitable that any businesses which would have not adopted to the latest and the greatest, the way world was changing, would not have survived in the long, or would not have returned good value to the shareholders in the long run. What actually changed because of pandemic right now is more in terms of it has accelerated some aspects of the change, and it has practically put some change dimensions in question mark. Right now, to understand how will the world change, I think we should look at it in two different episodes. I think episode one is till we find a vaccine or a medicinal cure, which practically gives us all the confidence that it doesn't matter, we can go back to our normal lives. And if either we will not get infected because the vaccine, we have been vaccinated, or even if we get infected, just like dengue or malaria, there is a medicine which is likely to cure us. There's a very high likelihood that we all will survive. So I think till that thing happens, it's very unlikely that we all will go back to our normal lives. So hence, let's treat that as a borderline. Before that would be something which we should call a social distancing phase in our lives. And after that will be the new normal, as what Bhavna also alluded. So this is what will happen till the vaccine and till this horizon. If I say this is horizon, till this is achieved, most of the businesses which are relying on social distancing or which cannot do social distancing will see a major challenge in terms of maintaining their top lines, bottom lines, keeping their people employed, etc., etc. I mean, you talk about restaurants, you talk about cinemas, even you talk about many affiliated industries with these. Even you talk about the great weddings of India, which had so many SMEs just relying on just to supply the good weddings the way they happen. Right? Lot of small industries, a lot of food industries. So a lot of them will be challenged because the social distancing will not be easy for them to follow. So either they will have to rapidly reinvent them, and if they cannot reinvent them, of course they will face the challenge. Second will be a set of industries which will continue to remain essentials. They will, at least in terms of the full demand picture, they will not change. For example, the typical FMCGs, while the shape of demand will change, people will want more sanitizers compared to more, say, deodorants at this point of time. For example, I was working with one of the big ice cream manufacturers a few days back, and they are actually seeing a minus 80% decline in the ice creams while this is the season, and this is a big multinational I'm talking about, right? So I think that the shape of demand will change, but still the people will want them, and they will have to rediscover the way of the supply side for them. So how do you ensure that the supply shocks are overcome? There is a latent demand. How do you ensure that you fulfill that demand? So that will be the focus till the horizon. Post horizon, once we have the vaccine or a medication, I think the new normal will kick in. And since Bhavna has already talked about it, I will not going to talk too much about it. I think 2-3 things I'll just want to highlight. Number one, every pandemic or every big recession or every big change that occurs consumer habits change. And once the new normal is achieved or things come back to normal, some of these habits or consumer behavior comes back to normal, but some of this permanently changes. For example, when the SARS crisis came in China previous time, this led to actually a lot of people moving to digital buying, e-commerce, etc. And that had a big role in making Alibaba a big success in China. Even if you talk about the Great Depression, a lot of many big companies that we are talking about today, they started during the course of Great Depression. So this change of consumer behavior is something that everyone will need to keep an eye on. And the way the sustained consumer behavior change happens, the new business models will develop there. I mean, one very obvious thing that everyone can guess is e-commerce, digital will obviously become a significant part of life. Many people who have been introduced to e-commerce for the first time, for example, during this crisis will continue to remain on e-commerce, and suddenly you will see their share increasing significantly. Right? And for every company, this channel is going to become even more important. And there are multiple more things. I mean, feel free to go through many of our websites, a lot of consulting websites, and you will see all of these things laid out. So that is how the world is going to change. What will change for consulting? I think for consulting, honestly, not much. There will be a destruction of demand generally, yes. I mean, because generally the overall activities would be down. But I mean, consulting is like really, really huge. It is estimated to be $150 to $200 billion business every year that happens worldwide. I mean, even if it goes down by 10-20%, it is still going to remain significantly high. But as always happens with consultants, the problems change, right? And I think the problems will continue to be there. Right now, because of these disruptions, there are problems all around. And consultants right now will be focusing on solving here and now till the horizon to make sure that how to take care, there are no supply shocks, how to ensure that what are the new normal, what are the new behavior of consumers, and what are the new associated inventions, business models that you need to focus on, what will change on the route to market, go to market, even M&As for that matter. I mean, typically, history has shown that M&As that happen in the recessionary times, the total shareholder value return in the deals done in the recessionary times is much higher than the deals which are done in the booming times. So just the shift will happen in the types of projects which are happening. But I don't think the inherent question of whether consulting will remain relevant will even be on anyone's minds at this point of time. I mean, just to give you a sense, in last 40 days, we at least have been running super duper busy. I mean, more than our regular days, because everyone that we had worked with in the past would have been asking what to do now, right? Some of them paid, some of them not paid, doesn't matter. I think you have to be there for it. Now coming to the most important part, what does it mean for you? I think since most of you would be graduating at this point of time, I know, I mean, this is a tough time for all of you. I think many of you would have been placed in very good companies. You would have thought about getting placed into your dream companies. It might have happened for some of you. Congratulations. I think it is a really big deal. It might not have happened for some of you because many companies would not have come on campuses, might not have been hiring, might have rescinded offers, might have postponed. And in general, the job market would have been is right now a bit tough, right? So what do you need to do, right? My only sense is I can draw parallel from 2008-9 recession, which just happened once we passed out in 2007. And I know a couple of very good friends of mine who were in those 8-9 when they started their careers. One of them specifically, I will mention, the start was not very good. Did not even get into the best company he wanted to, where he wanted to go. I think after 2-3 job jumps, finally he made it to Accenture, which was one of his dream companies at that point of time, but was not in a team where he wanted to be. Just through internal persistence, knowing all of us, pushing us, doing a lot of work, he was able to practically join us in the team where he wanted to join. And ultimately he reached where he wanted to. But for him, compared to any of the other batches, the path was much more complex compared to anyone else. You know, so, and what did he do differently? I think as you talk about these times, keep in mind that the knowledge that you are going to bring on table. So there are some specific skills that Bhavna has talked about. Please keep those in mind, of course. And then I'm saying that the knowledge that you bring on table will be table stakes. Today, because of mobile, computers, internet, I think everyone has access to a lot of knowledge. It is important that what you will be known for. There are some fields will be better than others. But what will become even more important is your ability to do problem solving and your ability to drive change. I think most of the leaders, since most of you come from the profile of business schools, or good business schools, and you have been just, in a phase where you have been just passed out of business schools. How do you solve a problem and how do you ensure that you drive the change is going to be the key differentiators which are going to define success. What can you do? I think two quick things. One, please be very, very careful whatever job you take at this stage of your personal learning and personal growth. Make sure that you have personal learning. Any job which is giving you personal learning is worth a job that you should keep. And second, be very, very persistent in terms of where do you want to reach. Have a vision, experiment with yourself, and be resilient. You will not get everything that you want in these times, but whatever is coming your way, how is it letting you or giving you a path to reach your goal is what will be very, very important. So make sure you are persistent and your resilience, whatever right now is being thrown at you, you really excel at it. You have one eye on your vision and be very clear how will you navigate the path to reach there. I think with that, I will stop right now. Be happy to take any questions later in the session or otherwise. Back to you, Subrat.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Anubhav. I think the way you structured your entire thought, it gave a lot to all the participants because they are very practical and hands-on suggestions which both you and Bhavna have outlined for the participants. Himanshu, now I move to you to share your initial views. Yeah,
correct.
Over to you, Himanshu.
Correct. So I will keep it a little short just to be cognizant of the time. Just before I start, really, let me just give you some perspective. Essentially, I graduated from XLRI in 2011 from the HR program. Was lucky enough to get into business consulting, and since for the last 9.5 years, I've never done a HR kind of a project. But most of my views come from the fact that I have been involved in multiple organizations from a consulting engagement, and also kind of talking to this large fraternity of HR managers who are my batchmates. In fact, just to add on, in the last 25, 30, 40 odd days, the WhatsApp group of our batch has just become suddenly so active from both the BM guys, which is the business management, as well as the HR guys. So all my views will be dependent on the client plus this larger fraternity of HR managers. And since I also kind of do campus recruitment from Accenture side, so I will also give you a perspective of what I typically see on campuses and where do I see a gap, or where do I see the potential areas of improvement for all these young folks. So essentially, just to start off, and I think Bhavna and Anubhav have kind of put it really well. So this COVID thing is something which is it's like once in a lifetime, right? Who would have thought that oil prices would crash like anything? Who would have thought that so many countries would be putting almost 10, 15, 20% of their GDP into health, hospitals in an immediate future? So much rollout will happen. So a lot of capitalist economies are becoming more social because that's the norm. Who would have thought that India would be under lockdown for almost 2 months where I can't go out of my house, right? So these are like unprecedented times. And obviously, the entire perspective or the future that the most consultants thought that will be the norm for the next 5, 10, 20 years will fundamentally change. So I will try to give you a perspective from the auto industry, which I've done a lot of projects on. Now, way back, I think around 3, 4, 5 years back, I think there were 4 key trends that the auto industry thought that the industry would move in that direction. One was the electric. Now, some European economies were in front of it. India was slightly behind. China was also catching up. Second was around the shared mobility, which again caught up like anything. So all your Ubers and all the Olas of the world suddenly came into India, and you realize, oh, the demand of the auto industry for buying a personal will drop like anything. Third was around the autonomous vehicle, which is again a work under progress in some of the Silicon Valley startups, some of the Silicon Valley big companies. And last was the connected vehicle, whereby I say that, okay, I can talk by putting a chip or putting an instrument or panel on the car, which helps me in being connected with my mobile or to the nearest shop or something like that. Where are we on all these 4? nowhere, right? Just to give you a perspective on my current client, we've kind of just wrapped up a 2-year-old engagement. We're still kind of negotiating an extension, which is going to take time. The plant is located in Chennai. The supply chain predominantly comes from the raw material comes from Pune and Gurgaon, right? Showrooms are all under shutdown. The dealers are saying, okay, we don't have money to pay our people, and we don't even know when this will open up, right? So the entire concept of just in time has gone for a toss, right? Because now whatever material you had, you can only make as much automotive vehicles as possible, because your supply chain is limited. Pune is not going to end so easily, right? Even if the lockdown is lifted, maybe the part supply will not happen from Pune or Gurgaon to this plant, right? So the entire strategy of having one plant in Chennai and one big plant, so they open up 2 plants next to each other, has kind of backfired, right? At some point of time, it fitted into the entire perspective of having large plants, using economies of scale, negotiating with the vendors. And as Bhavna was also saying, right, the supply chain is getting disrupted. Now, nobody wants only all the eggs in the same basket with China, right? People are saying, okay, let me diversify this entire supply chain. And as much as it holds for auto, it holds for some of the other industries as well. Moving on from the back end to the front end, right? Now the entire experience, and I was just reading a couple of days back, so Mahindra has just come up and saying, okay, from booking or from inquiry to all the way to booking and even delivery of the cars can happen at your doorstep with even you just going online and just picking up the entire thing. Who would have thought that automotive is a purchase that typically happens when people go to the dealership? Now, most of the dealers, I was talking to a couple of dealers, they were saying, this is not the new norm. Maybe once we open up, things will change. We don't know, right? So in spite of all the saying around it, nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows. And as Anubhav said, till the time we don't have a vaccine, we are still away from even understanding what the new norm is going to be, right? So essentially, the idea is, what is in it for people who are looking to come into consulting as a career? I have very 2 simple points to make. One, I think all the models will go for a toss, right? We in most consulting PPTs, consulting BDs or consulting engagements, right? We are customized to kind of building the entire scheme of things in a particular model. That this is a model that will work. This has worked in the past. That may not be possible. So, and this is something that I also kind of, when I'm in the campus and looking and hiring people, I also look at how innovatively can you think, right? And you are not really bounded by what the previous information or previous models are. And I think the second most important thing will be digital, right? Bhavna briefly touched about it. I think digital, and there's this joke that was going around that everybody was trying to bring digital into most of the organizations, but COVID is the one that actually brought it and not the CIOs, right? So now, even I think I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days back. A manufacturing company is thinking about making a work from home policy, because most organizations have realized that, okay, productivity is almost similar, right? And hence, why do I really want these people to travel to the plant, right? Except for people who are actually manufacturing. In fact, my current client, the CHR I was talking, he was saying, Himanshu, I don't even think that we need to make people travel to the dealerships, because fundamentally we have realized that understanding the pipeline and all the connected apps and everything, they can easily manage the pipeline and understand how sales happen, right? And in any case, they don't expect the customers to really throng to the dealership, at least in the next 2 to 3 months, right? And most of the sales will actually happen from the leads that are generated online. So why do I want the people to travel? So digital is going to play a big role, right? All the digital technologies, and some of them are kind of Greek to me as well. Right? A lot of people talk about what is Python, what is AI ML, right? Now, in fact, I think this week only, we are kind of building a white paper on use of blockchain in the auto industry, right? Now, who would have thought that blockchain for an Indian client will make so much of significance? But this is something that the client is now coming back to you. It's not something that you are pushing the client. Initially, it was like most consulting firms, they knew that technology and consulting intersections were going to sell, right? And most of us, right, be it a BCG or a McKinsey or an Accenture or a PwC or an EY, were kind of not really being able to crack this game. Okay, some was able to crack it at some client, but digital was not, because most of the people or most of the CHROs or the CIOs or the COs or the CFOs were actually asking for a return on investment. Okay, it's fine for a blockchain, right? You will take 2 crores from me. What is the benefit that I'm going to get out of it? now the conversation has shifted because most people realize that digital is the way forward. The newer technologies are the way forward. I have to be ahead of the game as compared to my competitors. Maybe this is something that's needed, and hence, obviously, it's going to be a trickle down effect. In Accenture, we are taking this very seriously, and hence, a lot of people are now getting themselves trained on newer digital stuff. Right? Every other day, we have some bits of the other guy training us on all these digital stuff. On the manufacturing side, for example, now this current client, obviously they have a plant outskirts of Chennai. They are struggling for manpower because some of the people are not from Chennai. Some of the people have now gone back to UPs and Bihars, right? Another conversation that started picking up is the connected workers, right? How do I really do with a limited set of workers, right? How do I ensure my productivity is maximized? How do I ensure that I use telematics, for example, for some of the fault finding in the field? So what I'm trying to tell you, things will not be the same, right? However we think that things might go back to the normal, I think the revenue numbers, all that will go back to normal. So auto industry may hit back the 19 numbers in, let's say, another 2 years. Some may hit back in 6 months. Airlines may take it 3 years, right? But the way the business is going to be done will change forever. And we need to understand this. Social distancing norms will remain for some bits of time. Now, even after the vaccine is found, I don't know where the next virus is going to come from. We really don't know how the American and the Chinese trade war is going to pan out, right? Now, if that screws up to a certain level, maybe entire supply chains are going to get affected. Maybe it will become difficult for the existing Indian companies to start selling outside India. Maybe the companies will start forcing people to have some bits of manufacturing within their company, within their country. So, net norms will change. Way business will happen will change. Consulting, I would say, will change again. And to be fair, see, consulting is a function of how the business happens. Because let's put it this way: consulting is a revenue or is a portion of the revenue from the client side, which is considered discretionary, right? So the next couple of years, at least, or 1.5 years, is going to be tough for consulting, right? When Anubhav put it, he put it really well. That work has actually increased because clients have become more demanding, right? And even that will take a hit on the revenues of the consulting firm. Clients may not be willing to pay that premium now. Clients may be more than willing to say, okay, let's do a variable deal where you say, okay, you increase this particular revenue. I will pay for that increase and only pay, let's say, 40% of the fix, which increases the pressure on you. Now, because from a staffing perspective, you cannot then have 5 people. You may have to be doing it with 3 people, right? To ensure the same delivery. And hence you have to use more digital tools. Hence you have to maybe train the client's team in more usage of these digital tools. So digital and the out of the box thinking are, I think, the 2 skills that I think most of us, in fact, we are doing it because we are in the business. And some of you who want to be in this business or want to join the business sometime should at least start imbibing this, because this is going to be the next norm. I think I've kept it short, Subrat.
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much, Himanshu. Before I move to some specific questions to all the 3 panelists, may I request all the audience to give them a virtual round of applause? I'm pretty sure that's possible using technology. Can we have a virtual round of applause for them?
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. So, Anubhav, I will come first to you, and let me take a contrarian approach over here. You know, all 3 of you talked about the new normal and things are going to change. But I'll be quoting a couple of, medical science experts, and what they have been sharing, that if you go in history, so they generally, the most famous quote for them is Spanish flu. When they quote Spanish flu, what they say is that at that point of time also, people said that things are going to change forever. But within 6 months of things getting normal, again, people went back to the old ways and their old habits. So there are 2 approaches. One is from the management experts, wherein they are saying that the new normal things will change. And then there is another approach by medical science experts that no, history and past experiences say that things will go back to normal. What are your views about it, and where do you would like to position the or suggest the way forward?
Yes, Subrat. So I think it's a right question to ask, right? And I think when you talk about the changes, there will be some changes which will be thematic changes. There will be some changes which will be tactical changes. So let me answer it by taking a couple of examples. So as I talked about SARS epidemic, when that happened in China and some short type of lockdown happened, a lot of people shifted to e-commerce. Once the lockdowns, or they were not essentially lockdowns, I mean, I would say they were more of containments at those points of time. Once they ended, the behavior of people, because they were accustomed to the the convenience of the e-commerce, they continued on that, and that actually played a big role in how Alibaba and some of the other players became big in China. If you talk about, for example, the changes in terms of technology, those changes were continuing before the pandemic. They will continue after the pandemic. The sum of the roles, as Himanshu talked about, of these technologies, of our ability to leverage it, or not even ability, I should say, our compulsion to leverage it, will become more imminent as we'll move forward. For example, how many of us were doing video conferences with our clients on a daily basis, day in, day out, before the pandemic? I mean, I can personally vouch for it. I have worked with practically all the FMCG companies in India in some form or shape. Barely, except when there have been some very, very specific meetings with people in different locations, it has been barely the way of regular communication. Right now, I am telling you, I am running 3 cases or 3 projects in parallel, and all of them are running full-fledged, and all of them are fully running on video conference. This technology has been there for ages. It's not something which is new. But as Himanshu talked about, epidemic forced us to adopt it. And now that is something which is not going to change fundamentally once we go back. Even if the vaccine, etc., is found, and we go back to new normal, there will be, everyone will have this inherent sense in mind that the productivity does not change when you are actually doing video conferencing. The travels that we do as consultants might come down significantly. We used to fly down for one meeting in different cities, and as some of the global warming and some other challenges start coming our way, people will know this way works. And I think there is a very, very high chance that people will continue to do some percentage of their conversations in video conference. Same thing will, in my opinion, will hold for many other trends. What will not change is something which has been very fundamental. For example, problem solving will not change for consultants. They are not going away, right? Even no matter how much AI becomes important at this stage, problem solving will not change. Change management, driving change is not going to change. So I think some of those fundamentals will continue to run, but the way, the enablers, the tactics, the technology, the usage of technology, in my opinion, will definitely change.
Thanks, Anubhav. Himanshu, if I come to you, you talked in specific about the manufacturing sector, and you talked as to how things are changing over there as well. Do you think that this, increasing use of technology adaptation, is it going to see a great loss in number of jobs, or is it going to not result in net loss, but rather than the need of people to upgrade and upskill themselves? Because if I just draw one parallel, if I talk about some of the solar plants in India, in Rajasthan, which are typically being run by the SoftBank Energy Group, which is there. Over there, the number of people working in entire solar plant is hardly 3 or 5. How do you see that impact in something as a core sector, manufacturing?
Correct. So I think, Subrat, to be fair, overall numbers increase or decrease is largely going to be dependent on where do we see the sales coming along, right? And how much capacity. I'll just give you again, going back to the same client because of some numbers perspective. They used to sell about 6.5 lakh units a year, right? Motorcycle brand. I will not name it, but most people will get it. Right? They build up a capacity for 12 lakhs units, thinking the next 3 to 4 years they will reach that number. Now, obviously, there will be a backward calculation of the number of people as well. Last year, obviously, March for the washout for the last 10-15 days, they ended with a drop about 15%. From my 8 lakhs, they dropped to about 6.5, 7 lakhs. They're projecting now, almost 2 months are gone, that they will hit, and since they are an expensive buy, they will hit about 3.5, 4.5 lakhs. which is 1/3 of their installed capacity, right? Now, digital or no digital, obviously it will have an impact on the contractual workers for sure. Now, they will not be able to really impact the permanent workers, right? So ultimately, overall job loss, a positive or a negative, will be driven by how much of the capacity do we see utilized. And also we also see a lot of news around, there were news yesterday only of UP and MP taking big decisions on the labor laws. News of some companies or the current government talking to a lot of companies from which are thinking of migrating from China to India, right? Net, if you say, assuming the capacity about 8-10%, which is the normal growth rate of demand, right? Selling of cars, FMCG. I see there will be some net loss of jobs, right? Now, those people will move from manufacturing to something else, right? So, again, manufacturing bolenge, there will be a net loss in manufacturing. Maybe they will move to supply chain. People will move to, let's say, e-commerce, right? So, Amazon may not be manufacturing a lot of stuff, but Amazon will require a lot of people to let's say, transport these goods to the respective home. Now, again, who knows if Amazon, and also in the US, Amazon has something called Amazon lockers, where they deliver it to a locker, you take it on your own behalf, or there's something called a drone delivery. Now, if the drone delivery happens, then again there will be a losses of job. So, what I would suggest is that ultimately, net you need to be reskilling yourself into different things. Core manufacturing itself will see a fundamental change, right? No more it will be like 10 people on the same line doing that manual work. Most of the companies are now going to push towards automation of the jobs, right? Because they don't know when these people will return, when something like this will happen again, right? So it will be companies also driving this change, and I think workers also needs to be kind of thinking from a perspective that, okay, I need to upskill myself.
Right. Thanks, Himanshu. Bhavna, coming to you. You know, a lot of experts have been pointing towards some positive effects of COVID. So if I just quote a couple of news items, they talk about that now the Ganga in Haridwar has become fit for drinking, or they talk about that the ozone layer is in much better shape because of all this reduced emissions and everything. Do you foresee that in the coming times, the consulting world, or if I talk about the companies in general, will have higher emphasis on sustainability, or they are just going back to, because on the contrary, if I talk about, Himanshu talked about the rules or the new norms which have been brought by UP and MP governments, and people are already touting that as being anti-sustainable growth, for the lack of a better word, which is there. So how do you see the overall industry response given these present circumstances?
Sure. I'm going to begin my response by quoting something that I've read. This is a Japanese author called Haruki Murakami, right? Very, very well-known Japanese author. And if you bear with me, I'll just read out a small para that he's written. Sure, and please. Once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is for certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what the storm is all about. Yeah. I always find that this is a very useful one, and I'm going to keep my philosophical views aside for a moment and link it back to business. Right. Look at what is happening as an outcome of everything that we're going through. Example number one. Before the COVID crisis hit, I was part of a group that was looking at this whole piece of digital disruption and how successful is it going to be. And there was a study that said that by the year 2025, if you pull together investments around the world, $750 billion would have been invested, and this is on the conservative side, would have been invested in digital transformation of most organizations, right? But the emphasis was that the success rate of these organizations and this digital disruption is going to be less than 10%. We are 2 months into this disruption. And like was said, I think COVID has been the biggest stimulant, has been the biggest catalyst. And that 10% is going to be at a conservative level, 70% or 80%, if not more, right? Because that is the new way that we need to get used to working. So that's one fallout. Second fallout, companies that considered each other as competition are today looking at how they can collaborate to be able to not just take care of their own top line and bottom line requirements, but how they can collaborate to really take care of the purpose that drives them, right? There are so many manufacturing organizations that are partnering with other organizations to look at manufacturing critical items, essential goods, right? Now, that's another example of the kind of transformation that's happening. The third example that I want to give you is that when organizations think of people, they are not just thinking of people who are on board, right? They are also thinking of their partners and vendors. I'm sure everybody who's on this webcast today would have heard about Airtel, which decided that along with its own salaries, it's going to take care of the basic salary for 25,000 employees of all of its partners, right? That is what this new normal is doing to us. And therefore, what I want to leave, the reason I read out both this quote and I shared these three examples is to say that I do believe that the largest change is about how we are viewing opportunities and how we are viewing possibilities. Yesterday, there was an event where Sadhguru, was part of the opening. And he said, the challenge is that we view the human as a resource. The human is not a resource. The human is a possibility. And I think COVID-19 has forced us to view those possibilities a lot more really. Subrat.
That's true. Yeah, thank you so much, Bhavna. In fact, that reminds me, maybe 6 years ago, I was listening to Dr. Murli Manohar Joshi in one of the conferences. And he said that I am a professor of physics. And I have always known that it is human beings. And, when I heard the name human resource, the only thing which I knew that any resource can be exploited. And then he said, then I looked at the average salary given to the top business schools across the country, and I saw astronomical figures. The only conclusion I came to, that they are paid so astronomical sum of money so that they can be converted from human beings to human resources. That keeping apart, I have got a lot of questions which are about specific sectors. So there are people who have talked about insurance. There are people who are talking about, say, manufacturing or IT, yes. I will slightly try to broad base and this is an open question to all three of you. To the extent possible, you are comfortable sharing. If you have to pick 2-3, industries whom you think hold the possibility of bouncing back the fastest, or the 2-3 industries whom you see are going to see good growth in the coming times, and I'm talking about relatively shorter horizon of maybe say 8 to 10 months, which is there, what would those few sectors be? Any one of you can take this.
So I'm happy to go first. I think
okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Himanshu.
No, it's fine. I'll go after you.
So I think the first one is e-commerce, because while a lot of organizations across industries are grappling with the new normal, I think for the e-commerce space, there is truly a huge opportunity that's opened up, and therefore their ability to capitalize on that and really drive some of that is going to be very important. That's one. The second one is when I look at, the education tech, fintech, that space, I see a lot of opportunity being there. Contactless, touchless payments are here to stay, right? No matter whether we discover a vaccine in 3 months, 6 months, or 10 years, God forbid, the reality is that if I have someone coughing next to me, I'm going to be really worried going forward, right? And therefore, whether it is the delivery person or it is my neighbor, how much ever contactless, touchless service I can bring in, I think that's going to be a growth paradigm from an industry perspective. Education. I am amazed by how seamlessly schools have started using technology to drive primary education for children, right? I used to think, when we were way back in school and we used to use laptops, etc., everyone would say, you guys have come a long way from the way we study. But kids today have come a long way. Zoom calls, Teams calls, that's how they are learning, right? And frankly, institutions that are supporting that from an edtech perspective are doing a phenomenal job. So I truly believe that the e-commerce, edtech, fintech companies have a strong, path for more rapid growth as compared to some of the others. Himanshu?
Yeah. So I think the first industry, and this is going to be a very, very quick recovery, would be the pharma and the medical devices. I see a significant, and talking from an India perspective, I see a significant transfer of manufacturing from China to India, at least in these two sectors, right? Because, and you remember when I think there was this need of this medicine and asked by Trump, and suddenly we see that Modi agreed to that. So I see pharma and if you see, so to me, I think the first thing that one should see for this quick recovery is look at the stock market, right? I see the pharma stocks have not dropped that much, right? So pharma will be a very quick recovery. Bhavna mentioned about the education. I'll just give you an example of Byju's. There's a friend in Byju's is saying that their March versus April. Now this March versus April, so April was almost 85% of the March revenues, which clearly means that absolutely no drop in revenues for a company like Byju. So education again will continue. Third sector, I think, will be your e-commerce and e-which ways will be there. Will be all these internet companies like a Google or a Facebook, because most of the leads will be coming online, right? So most of the companies, be it any sector, will be more than happy to kind of buy these products like a Google Analytics, which helps them get the next set of people from the online way. And I think the third would be our FMCGs, because ultimately we have realized that whatever happens, our consumption of the basic FMCG products are not going to drop like anything. Last, I think on the ones that will show the steepest or the longest recovery, my bet would be auto or any industry which is more of a discretionary spend. So your retail, premium high-end retail, because I don't see malls opening soon. I don't see people spending. So a lot of us were actually buying a lot of stuff on EMIs. I don't see when in this kind of a gloomy environment, people picking up their credit cards and building up their EMIs for a car or an expensive bag or even a foreign vacation. So maybe airline could be third. Airline, hotels would be probably the last. The only thing that is a silver lining is that maybe this entire situation might lead a lot of people to start traveling within India rather than outside India. Although there's a contrary view, Subrat, as well, and essentially this comes from an Accenture report I was reading a couple of days back with what happens in China. So they have so after what happened in Wuhan, they've kind of started with a new term called revenge shopping. I don't know whether that will happen. Right. Where they say that a lot of people might, after it opens up, might end up and we might see a spike in the consumption. But again, only time will tell, because that also, my sense, will be a little short-lived.
Sure.
I think just to add to those, till the horizon is achieved, till the vaccine or the medication comes in, I think two parts are going to play out. One is this entire social distancing norm, and second is because of the recession, generally the buying power is going to be in question. So anything which is essential, people will buy. So I think, in my opinion, also FMCG and pharmaceuticals will definitely recover really, really fast, assuming that they are able to manage the supply side of things. Demand will exist. But some of the discretionary spending related companies will find tough time to recover in the short run. Once the horizon is passed, the vaccine or the medication is in, depending upon the recessionary scenario, assuming it is a V-shaped scenario, which is being right now thought for India, travel and tourism will see a big boost. That's what right now we are discussing. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Anubhav. In fact, when Bhavna and Himanshu both talked about the edtech space, I personally see a very interesting battle brewing up over there. And if you ask me personally, I would not be surprised that the battle which we saw in the e-commerce space, 5-6 years back, the edtech space is actually preparing itself for that battle only. What that means in the short term, we will see a lot of opportunities and a lot of jobs coming up. But just like e-commerce industry also proved that at the end of the day, only 2 or 3 key players are going to survive and others will fall by the wayside. So that is because I've been following edtech space a little bit. That is my 2 cents about it. And now coming to a few specific questions. See, there is a question by Somsekhar. He says that, dear Mr. Anubhav and Mr. Himanshu, will you continue to recruit from the MBA campuses in 2020, 2021? Somsekhar, let me answer that on behalf of everyone else. The answer is yes. Which campuses, I'm not going to ask them. So let's drop this question right here. Another interesting question which has come from Ashish Jha. He says that, how are you preparing your clients for a possible disruption at social level? I think what he is trying to go a step ahead, that given all that, tyranny of the daily wage workers, which we have seen, and also about a lot of people going jobless, how are you preparing your clients? Himanshu was sharing about that client in Chennai, that some people who were not from the local area, they have left, they are not coming back. So I just request maybe any one of you to share your views as to how are you, aligning your clients to that kind of situation emerging, because that's actually unfolding even as we talk.
Correct. So Subrat, just to, and this example is not from the current client. I was talking to another vendor of this client. I was talking to the manufacturing head, and what he said was something that probably none of us would have even thought about. There are smaller companies who are, let's say, in deep corners, let's say, of outskirts of Noida. What they have started doing is essentially building certain housing within the plants, right? So they are ensuring that people stay within the same campus, they don't leave the campus, and hence they start the manufacturing, right, at a larger scheme of things, because they see something like this may come back again, where you are asked to shut down again, but if your people are within the campus and there's nobody coming from outside the campus into the factory premises, you are at least safe in that sense.
Sure.
So if I may just add, I think this question also has an added dimension, which is if you look today at the interplay that is happening between industry bodies, government, and private entrepreneurs or people who are running businesses, I think that's at a very, very different level. So the way different industry forums are acting as a bridge to really look at how we can support people working in different industries and really make that meaningful. It started out with a very simple skilling agenda, but I think over the last 3 to 4 months, there's been a lot of focus on how industry bodies are doing that. And a lot of the change that we're looking to drive, policies is a great example. There is a lot of conversation about how the Prime Minister is working with various states to look at how we can create a conducive environment for different institutions that want to come into India. And while we've done a great job on the ease of doing business in India index, and we've moved up on ease of doing business overall, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do things differently there. And the role of industry bodies has really come into its own with institutions like a NASSCOM, an ASSOCHAM, a CII, and various other forums really playing a huge role in influencing that. So that's the added piece I wanted to call out.
Sure. Anubhav, if I come specifically to you, it's a very, a direct question if I put it across. If you look at the last 3-4 years, for B school students, BFSI sector has been the savior because they have churned out the largest amount of jobs. In the present scenario, Himanshu has already shared his, initial views about it. But how do you think that maybe in next 6 months or something, the BFSI sector, if you may share, is going to shape up or is going to perform?
So I think this is a tough question to answer, to be very fair, and the answers are pretty much right. There are a lot of moving variables on that one. Let me tell you why I say that. Right, for BFSI sector, the inherent question in terms of demand, why these industries run. will be directly linked to the way the economy is progressing, right? So if you talk about, let me just start with the super macro. The latest way the Indian GDP is being projected is going to zero or it's going to go negative, right? And in a way, this is one sector which is very, very directly linked to it. In fact, to the extent, a lot of BFSI strategies that are being made, that were being made in the past world for 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, were always linked to, had a very high correlation with the GDP growth forecast. Some were over indexed on that, some were under indexed. So that is going to be under pressure. India is assumed to have a V-shaped recovery. This V-shaped recovery, however, will not be democratic, if I can say so. For example, in FMCG, specifically within that, say an Alcobev, foods will definitely have a V-shaped recovery. But say something like a airline or something like restaurants, cinema halls, they will have practically U-shaped recovery or even L-shaped for that matter. Now, depending upon the different BFSI clients, which of them have exposure to which of these industries or higher exposure to which of these industries will face the brunt hit from the demand side. So a sector or a company which has higher exposure to say some of the airline industries, etc., is definitely going to bear more brunt compared to someone which has more exposure to the other sectors. On the supply side, I think not much is going to change, because while a capital is one, the people aspect of supply, there is going to be more challenge, as some of my colleagues were talking about here, on the labor side of things. I mean, we are expecting that there's going to be good labor shortage across this. I don't think it is going to affect BFSI so much, except for some of the sales aspects of things, where digital solutions can come in handy.
Right. Thank you so much, Anubhav. I think we are well past our time of 7:30. Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you, Anubhav. Thank you, Himanshu, for joining us. Thank you, everyone else. But as I requested somewhere midway, can we have a virtual round of applause once again for the panelists?
Thanks, Subrat.
Thank you.
Thank you, and all the very best to all of you. I think it's an exciting time ahead.